All right, people. Review of the week time. Review of the week, and we preview the following week, or this coming week, I really should say. This is going to be a big week. We obviously have Joshua versus Dubois. We will talk about that a little bit later on, but I have some things planned. Obviously, I'm going to get my prediction video out tomorrow at some point. I have another little video that I've been working on with a mate of mine for the last couple of weeks, and we hopefully will have that out for you guys Tuesday or Wednesday, one or the other. I'm really looking forward to this one. I think it's going to be I think it's going to be a good little video. We're working on that. We'll keep you in the loop on that one, but we'll talk more about Joshua versus Dubois inevitably as this video goes on. Let's start, as we always do, review of the week. If there's ever been boxing on, we always start with that. And the major talking point is obviously going to be the fallout from Canelo versus Berlanga. Now, Canelo beating Berlanga, I expected it personally. Obviously, if you look at it on BoxRec, it will tell you it was for 2 of Canelo's titles. It was actually for 3 for some reason. BoxRec bizarrely don't rate the BBA anymore. I mean, they are a pretty bad organization, to be fair, but you know, their title is still there, so I don't know what BoxRec are at, but hey, that was what was on last night. Now, let's talk about the undercard. So, Rowley got back to winning ways. Okay, Rowley got back to winning ways. Stephen Fulton with a split decision win over Carlos Castro. Now, Fulton, I don't believe, has fought since Inoue. No, that's his first fight since the Inoue loss. Now, I haven't seen his fight, nor have I seen Caleb Plant's fight, but Fulton I rate quite highly. As you know, this was a 10-rounder up at featherweight. Fulton was down in round 5. He did tweet something I seen where he was kind of hinting at personal issues. Obviously, this was today, post in the immediate aftermath of the fight. So I don't know what's really going on with him. You know, the Inoue fight, it was punishing, but I didn't think it would, you know, leave him, you know, looking a shell of himself. Certainly not. But hopefully, look, I hope whatever's going on with him, he ends up coming out the other end okay. And let's wait and see what he looks like in the future. And Caleb Plant obviously getting back to winning ways, not without trouble. He was down in this fight. Plant, this was for the interim. I know, again, it won't say it on BoxRec, but it was for the interim WBA super middleweight title. So God forbid we see that rematch. No disrespect to Caleb Plant, but he was soundly beaten and stopped by Canelo. Don't really want to see it again. Now we get into, for my sins, I did make an attempt to watch this fight. In spite of the fact I watched people's review. I watched people's review of this fight, and it didn't fill me with optimism that I would be captivated, let's just say. Erislandy Lara versus Danny Garcia. Do you know what? I remember they announced this and I was just like, why? You've a 40-plus-year-old Erislandy Lara at middleweight against Danny Garcia, who, even though he was a champion at welterweight, let's be frank here, he won that world title, a vacant WBC title against Robert Guerrero. All right, he won that. Did he even make a defense against it? Because I think he won that in 2016, early 2016. He tried to go look this up, right? In 2016, Danny Garcia tried to cherry pick Sam Eggington for a non-title fight. Yeah, he did do that. Then he obviously fought Samuel Vargas instead. And then he fought Keith Thurman. Hang on a second, I check his boxer. I don't think he ever defended that title. Did he? No, he wouldn't have, because he won that. That was the end. He won the vacant title against Robert Guerrero. He never defended that title. So his run at welterweight was not great. He lost to Sean Porter. He lost soundly to Errol Spence. And his best days were at 140 pounds. Clearly his best days were at 140 pounds. He got his best wins, like against Amir Khan, Lucas Matisse. That was a really good win against Lucas Matisse. Danny Garcia was actually done very well in that fight against Lucas Matisse. A lot of people actually had Matisse down to win that fight. Had the fight against, I think it was, what was the guy's name? I don't know, BoxRec is gone now, but I remember the fight, Herrera or something like that his name was. Towards the end he had a few shaky performances, but ultimately 140 was his division. This is 160 pounds. Now I know a fight was fought at 156 for whatever reason, but he should not have been, regardless of the weight, up there at 160. I was watching Joe Stunner's video on this, and he was talking about the middleweight division being a division in boxing that you would associate it as one of boxing's glamour divisions in a way, because you think of the fighters who've been through the middleweight division, who have graced the middleweight division, going back throughout the course of history. You know, I think Bob Fitzsimmons was his name, the New Zealand fighter, who was a former heavyweight champion. I think he actually fought at middleweight briefly, if I'm not mistaken. Stanley Ketchel, the man who famously fought Jack Johnson, dropped Jack Johnson, then proceeded to knock Stanley Ketchel's teeth out. I think that was in 1909-ish, thereabouts, 1908, 1909. Who else was there at middleweight? You, obviously, Sugar Ray Robinson, obviously, of course, Sugar Ray Robinson. You have Carlos Monzon. You have the likes of Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Just Marvelous Marvin. If ever a name suited him, that was it. Gerald McClellan, Julian Jackson, Bernard Hopkins, Roy Jones. You have Jermaine Taylor, Triple G, Gennady Golovkin, Canelo Alvarez, Danny Jacobs. So many good names at middleweight. And you look at the division now, and it's like, it's fairly thin on the ground. And I think that's a wider problem. I mean, like, we look back 10 years ago, Triple G was the guy at middleweight in 2014. Who was he fighting? He was having to fight his mandatories because none of the other champions wanted to fight him. And there wasn't really any great champions. I mean, no disrespect to Darren Barker, but he was able to pick up a version of the middleweight title in that division against Daniel Gil. Daniel Gil was a champion. Miguel Cotto was fighting basically 154 pounds, but he was a middleweight champion. You know, so it wasn't a stacked division back then. Sergio Martinez had an effed up knee and he had to retire after, well, I think it was, you could see in the Cotto fight 10 years ago that knee was absolutely messed up. So the middleweight division wasn't stacked back then. It was weakening. But then you had, you know, Danny Jacobs, you had Canelo Alvarez come up, Billy Joe Saunders. So it actually gained a little bit of a lease of life. And now it's just, it's not even gone back. It's not even gone 2 steps back. It's gone 10 steps back, the middleweight division. And yeah, this fight was awful. It really was. It really, truly was. Erislandy Lara lands a left hand on Danny Garcia towards the back end of round 9. Garcia touches down and his dad that was it. And Garcia, even though he's the younger man, and it's not been a punishing career necessarily, you know, against Keith Thurman he got outboxed. Against Sean Porter he just got pretty much outmanned. He got fairly, you know, comprehensively beaten by Errol Spence, but he didn't lead a punishing career. He's not someone who blows up in between fights, but Garcia just looked done in there. Just looked like he just had no ambition, no desire in there. It was sad in a way. So that was the co-flipping main. Brilliant. And then we get to Canelo versus Berlanga. Now, the result I expected was Canelo Alvarez winning, but I thought he'd stop Berlanga. He very nearly did, and some would argue maybe the corner could have actually pulled Edgar Berlanga out. I actually woke up and I watched it live, saw the knockdown. Canelo, again, and I had a look at it again this morning, gave Berlanga a beating and a half. And listen, Berlanga, I said what would happen and it flipping happened. Berlanga uses his size. He has no real way of adjusting. He has no real way of stopping or adjusting to what Canelo Alvarez is doing. He's going to take a tremendous beating. It's just the case, does he have the will and the heart to survive the 12 rounds? He obviously did. But that was a run-of-the-mill, straightforward, routine title and payday for Canelo Alvarez. And it needs to be better than this. It needs to be better than this. There are 2 fights that you are hearing floated around for Canelo Alvarez. One of them I like, and I would not be picking Canelo in it, quite frankly. The other one I don't particularly like. I get it, but I don't like it, and I would be picking Canelo Alvarez in it very heavily. The first fight they're talking about, and Canelo is even, I'll even get it up here before I end up going on to Twitter to talk about some more things boxing. But Canelo Alvarez has entertained a rematch with Dimitri Bivol. I'll see if I can get the actual quotes here. Yes. Canelo Alvarez has declared that if he wants to rematch Dmitry Bivol, if he beats Artur Beterbiev, so the rematch can be for undisputed at light heavyweight. Canelo Alvarez has, of course, been a light heavyweight champion to beat Sergey Kovalev nearly 5 years ago, but he wants to rematch Bivol. Now, credit to him, credit where credit is due. All the credit to Canelo Alvarez. If he moves up to 175 pounds and he was to pull it off, beat Dmitry Bivol, it would be a tremendous achievement. He would be a 2-division undisputed champion, because he wasn't, correct me if I'm wrong, no, he wasn't undisputed at middleweight. 2-division undisputed champion. Avenging that loss, it would be tremendous. And Canelo Alvarez is a first ballot Hall of Famer, that of which there's no question, and no one can dispute that. But you would really be making the case that this guy is arguably one of, if not the greatest Mexican fighters. He already has that claim now to be one of, if not the greatest. But to go up there and do that, unbelievable. I don't think he will, quite frankly. I don't. I think that Bivol is too talented. He has Canelo's number. And I think even 168, because Berlanga looked a much bigger man in there, I think that is Canelo's limit, quite frankly. I think it's his best division is 168, but it's his limit. Even though Bivol is not the biggest 175 pounder in the world, you saw when they fought, he was the bigger of the two. It might bring the best out of Canelo. It might very well bring the best out of him, but it's a fight in which I wouldn't be making Canelo favourite, but all the credit in the world to him if he goes ahead and takes it. Now, the other fight that's being talked about is Canelo versus Crawford, and I have heard Eddie Hearn kind of make inference to it, as well as Turki Al-Sheikh, that is really the only fight that's keeping Terence Crawford in boxing, because again, what else does he need to do? He's a 154-pound champion. That's his 4th division, undisputed at 140, undisputed at 147, former lightweight champion. He's done it all, and he's not getting any younger. I mean, the guy is closer to 40 than he is to 30. So how much does Crawford actually still want it? He's not really got anything to prove. He's beaten everyone who he's needed to fight. Or he's fought everyone who was needed to fight. He's beaten them all. Well, mind you. And he's made the bag. They want to do Canelo versus Crawford. It will be a big pay-per-view event in the US. It certainly would be. It would draw a hell of a lot of money. Canelo is one of those fighters where... And I get where Canelo is coming from. And Turki Al-Sheikh is kind of guilty of doing this, where he, in spite of whatever is happening, so if there's a fight planned between fighter A and fighter B, he's talking about what fighter A is going to be doing next fight, and you're like, hold up, it's a competitive fight fighter A is in, you don't know if he's going to get through it. Prime example would be Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, both on the same card, both have respective fights, planning what they're going to do next. You're like, hang on, both are in, on paper, competitive fights. So one of them could lose, and one of them did lose. So, you know, you don't want to plan ahead and start talking to a fighter about what you're going to do next when the fighter already has a fight. And Canelo is that sort of guy where it's like, I'm focusing on Berlanga, so talk about Terence Crawford all you want, but not with me. I'm focusing on the guy in front of me. They may reopen. If they do, I'm sure Turkey has a number there that Canelo will like sooner rather than later, and whether you like the fight or not, me personally, I've thought about it, I've gone back and forth with it, but I think the size would be just too much for Crawford to overcome, and I would expect Canelo to win. Then I just think it's a routine win for Canelo. I really do. Crawford to be competitive, but when I saw him against Madrimov and the size difference, and he looked undersized at 154, not undersized, the wrong word, but 154 is one thing, 168 is a whole nother ball game. I mean, I've seen a clip of Edgar Berlanga, and I've seen people, you know, doubt the validity of this claim, and yeah, I 100% see where they're coming from with Eddie Hearn, where Berlanga is in the hotel saying that on fight day, on like in the ring, he's 205. Yeah, I call BS on that as well, but he's clearly rehydrating something massive. You know, clearly. And Canelo is no small. He's not a small guy at 168, so could be problematic for Terence Crawford. Just on a quick event that happened in New Zealand, I seen Alex Leopai Jr. against the guy, Mansui Fatau. I'm assuming that name is of New Zealand. I wonder has he got some Samoan in him with a name like that, against Alex Leopai Jr. Now, 18 years old is Alex Leopai Jr. Very crude, Majority decision on his pro debut, which was back in April. So not a great start, but he certainly has a bit of pop there. He certainly has a bit of pop. He actually finished this fight off with an uppercut. His old man, Alex Yafai Sr., do you remember Shannon Briggs? You're fighting a pie. Alex Yafai Sr. was a very, very poor heavyweight. He was a very poor heavyweight championship challenger against Klitschko back in 2014. The only punch he had in his resume, and famously he actually drew with Mark DeMori of all people. Imagine that, go figure, highlighting Mark DeMori's career. He had a pretty good uppercut. So it seems like his son has developed that as well. David Yoka, I quite like David Yoka. I think he's a talented fighter. I think he's got a lot of promise there. He moved to 10-0 with a win over Tommy Karpency. Tommy Karpency, way undersized for this fight at cruiserweight. 191 pounds as opposed to David Yoka's 199. That implies that Tommy Karpency probably didn't even need to cut for this fight. He famously is cut short against the likes of Adonis Stevenson and Gilberto Ramirez at 175. Had no business being in there at 200 pounds, but nevertheless he fought at that fight anyway. So that was a little card that was on in New Zealand. It is there on the zone if anyone wants to have a look at it. David Yoka more so. I like David Yoka. I will, as I've said, keeping a close eye on David Yoka. Keeping a close eye on him. Let's have a look-see at some of the boxing news. Oh, the joys. The joys. It is joyful. We do love it. This has been a week where a lot of fight cards have been announced. A lot of fights have been announced. Sonny Edwards will now face Galal Yafai in a flyweight clash on November the 30th in Birmingham. That card in Sheffield, that was originally in Sheffield, then went to the Copper Box, is now back in Sheffield. You know that one. Galal Yafai is apparently going to have a run out on that show before he fights Sonny Edwards. I think this is a really interesting fight. Galal Yafai is someone who I've seen, not all of his pro fights, but many of them, and I've not really been madly impressed. Like, yes, he's talented, there is talent there, but I'm not seeing this world beater. And I think they're pushing him a little bit too fast based upon the gold medal. And at the end of the day, the draw opened up lovely for Galal Yafai in Tokyo 2020. It opened up lovely for him. So I don't know. Sonny Edwards, I know very well. Well, don't know him personally. I have met Sonny Edwards in person. I have had conversations with him, but I don't know him personally. But I know him as a fighter. And yeah, what you see is what you get. He's a good long-range boxer. He is fast, but he took a Hail Mary beating in there against Bam Rodriguez not even a year ago. So I wonder still where he's at. He has had a comeback fight since then, but let's see. You know, when you see a fighter who's operated at world level like Sonny Edwards drop down to kind of domestic level-ish, European level, normally actually do quite well. I saw that with Liam Smith a few years ago when he fought Anthony Fowler. I mean, that was just... Apart from, I think, one round where Anthony Fowler stunned Liam Smith, it was pretty much all Liam Smith. So could we see a similar thing? Will the experience of Edwards tell? If Edwards is firing on all cylinders, I'll be making Sonny Edwards' favourite in this fight. I would be, if he's firing on all cylinders now. Frank Warren has actually signed Tony Yoka and is now planning on making Joyce versus Tony Yoka in the near future. Wouldn't shock me if Frank Warren, because you got to bear in mind, we're coming into the business end of the year now. We're seeing a lot of cards announced. We're seeing Eddie Hearn announce some cards. We're seeing Frank Warren, Ben Shalom announce some cards. Obviously, he's announced the Howard Davis versus Adam Bazim, which is actually a really good little scrap, to be fair. So we're seeing these promoters in the UK get the UK shows back up and running, get these shows announced. And I think if Frank was to do a Magnificent Seven, would I see it as a potential headline act? Well, yeah, probably, actually. You know, think about it. Probably, money-wise, they probably wanted the headline. Excuse me. But I could see it. I'd be interested in it. It'd be a real case of loser leaves town. Both guys have had... Well, Joyce has done more in his career. There's no ifs or buts. He's done a lot more than Tony Yoka as a professional anyway. His losses have come against Chisora. Okay, that's a bit of a worry because Chisora's seen better days. But Zhilei Zhang, losing to him, I mean, you know, most people lose to Zhilei Zhang. Zhilei Zhang is a very, very good fighter. Very dangerous fighter. Very dangerous man. So, okay, that was just poor matchmaking. Tony Yoka lost to Martin Bacoli. All right, no harm there. Carlos Takam, bit of a worry because Takam hasn't been looking the best lately. And then he lost to, was that Riyad Mahrez guy? who has been beaten by the likes of, what's his name, Jared Anderson. So not ideal for Tony Yoka. So Joyce, you would say, is probably a little bit better off at this point in his respective career. But like that, you know, you don't know when they get in the ring. It will be an interesting scrap, but it really is a case of loser leaves town. It genuinely really is. It is now reported that Gervonta Davis and Dave Benavidez could reportedly share a card again. They obviously shared a card in the Frank Martin show. And that could be happening on December 14th. As I was saying, we're into the business end of the year. So it's all starting to take shape now. And we're getting to see some of these fights get announced. Now, listen, I'd like to see Canelo versus Benavidez. I'd like to see Tank versus Shakur. We are unfortunately not going to see that. Well, certainly not on December the 14th. But Tank Davis and Dave Benavidez are two of my favourite fighters to watch respectively. Listen, Tank Davis as a person, yeah, he's probably not someone I'd want to hang out with, to be honest with you. But Tank Davis, the fighter, honestly, I've said it once, I'll say it again. I could watch Tank Davis till the cows come home. I love this guy. I love watching Tank Davis. He's so powerful. I love the punching power. He's so fun to watch. I honestly, I love watching Tank Davis fight. I really do. Likewise, Benavidez. Benavidez is all action. Question the power a little bit at 175. I understand that. You'd be 100% right to as well, based upon the Vodcek fight. Someone whose power, when he's firing on all cylinders, we don't question, is Deontay Wilder, and his trainer Malik Scott has declared that he is not yet retired from boxing. Probably wishful think of Malik Scott. I mean, he wants to see those bags. Didn't make that much as a fighter, so here we go. He said, and I quote, "He'll be back. Deontay will fight again. He still has a bright future in boxing." Bright future at 39. Don't think I've ever heard that before. Anyhow, especially at the high levels. As for the biggest fights, it could be against Francis Ngannou or Anthony Joshua. They are still mega fights. So, listen, Turkey Al-Sheikh would do. If Deontay Wilder fought Francis Ngannou, when I think about it, that may be the only fight that actually Deontay Wilder could have a prayer of looking somewhat decent in. Because I don't think Francis Ngannou, Joshua was able to land peaches of right hands. Now, Wilder is not as good a counter-puncher as Anthony Joshua, but you give him opportunities to land, he will take them. And Francis Ngannou, I don't know what way he's going to be after that knockout loss to Anthony Joshua. That was a bad knockout loss. If Deontay Wilder can find some of that inner killer, it could be a good look. That might not end well for Ngannou. But saying that, the Wilder we have, I mean, the Wilder who fought Luis Ortiz, both fights, the Wilder who fought Dominic Brazil, Mauro Ranallo, Wilder hit Brazil so hard they are feeling it in Brazil. Do you remember that saying? I loved that. That was brilliant. That knocked it. That was hellacious, that right hand he hit Dominic Brazil with. Honestly, I mean, I love what they did when they showed the replays of the knockout. They showed the press row, and everyone at press row with their mouths just on the floor when that knockout happened. If we had that Wilder, I would have genuine fears for Francis Ngannou, genuinely. But we don't. And I don't think Malik Scott has helped that. I think Malik Scott is, again, out for himself, as everyone in Team Wilder is. The only people who weren't out for themselves were, well, Lou DiBella was, to be fair, because obviously he's the promoter. He wants to get the best deal for his fighter. He was doing his job, right? We'll give him that. He was doing his job. I'll give him that one. And obviously another person who was doing their job was Mark Breland, the corner man. Where are they? They're no longer in Team Wilder. There you go. So Wilder I don't think he should stay. His heart doesn't seem to be in it, and he will only end up getting himself hurt. He will only end up getting himself hurt again. But look, it's his career. Liam Davis versus Shabazz Massoud has now been rescheduled for November the 2nd in Birmingham. Also, Sam Gilly versus Lewis Green, the rematch, will take place on October the 18th in London. I think that's a Friday, is it not, if I'm not mistaken? Sam Gilly, Lewis Green, first fight was pretty good. Lewis Green, I think, didn't he knock out Jack McGann or someone like that on one of those Saudi shows. So actually, wait a minute, has Sam Gilly even fought since that? Because I've not heard a peep from Sam Gilly, and that's got to be about a year ago since he fought. I think Isaac Chamberlain fought on that card again as well against Michael Lawal, and I have not heard a peep from him since then. And Sam Gilly is an entertaining fighter at domestic level. He is. He's an entertaining domestic level fighter. That's what Sam Gilly is. I don't see him as a world beater, nor do I see Louis Green as a world beater, but both those guys together, they'll put on a good fight. They'll put on a good fight, 110%. Now, I have also seen that, well, an official announcement, but I'm hearing a lot of people with the rumours that the fight between Liam Smith and Josh Kelly, which is meant to be taking place this week on the Joshua versus Dubois undercard, is now off. That was one of those fights where I was looking at, I was kind of like, alright, it's just, you know, it's there. If it was a peak Liam Smith or close to, I'd make him the favourite, but I don't think we have that, and apparently he's the one who's pulled out. Are they going to give Josh Kelly a runaround opponent? Are they going to pull him from the card at short notice? I don't think we've ever had one of these Saudi shows where it's been this close to a fight someone's pulled out. We've seen people fight injured on these shows, like Frank Sanchez. In all honesty, I know it's going to sound bad, right? But I'll be doing a live watch along for this show. I really don't want to be doing a 3-hour plus live watch along for all these fights, because the card's going on so long. That had 10-12 round decision written all over it. And listen, they need to get these shows over with earlier. I mean, if you think about it like this, if you're in the UK, you might be okay with Wembley because the Jubilee line goes there. So if you're staying in central London, but you know, public transport doesn't run 24 hours. As I said, the Jubilee line, you're probably okay with that if you're going back to London. But if it's any later than, I think, midnight or anything like that, you could have a bit of bother there. But these shows starting, let's say, 4 in the evening and then carrying on until the wee hours, they started these Saudi shows on Saudi time with Joshua versus Ruiz. And when I say Saudi time, that show was done by about 9:30 UK time. Perfect. Everyone was happy. Now we're going into the wee hours for a show which is essentially on kind of our time zone. I know they're a little bit ahead, but you know what I mean. And they're dragging them on and dragging them on and dragging them on. I know I've been going over this before, but I can't emphasize it enough. They've been just dragging these shows on. You're just like, we want to see the boxing. We want to see the boxing. Ideally, it would be, this is the fight, interview the fighter, here's my thoughts on the fight, done in 5 minutes. I'm talking about as a show, not me, myself, but you know what I mean, like the pundits, here's my thoughts on the fights, bright, brilliant, tail of the tape for the next fight, let's go. That'd be perfect. And all this, you know, live acts and stuff like that, I don't give a damn about Liam Gallagher or Oasis. I just want to see the main event like that. So yeah, that is pretty much everything. Don't think I've anything else really to report, and I want to keep this video too long either. So I will leave it there. I hope you enjoyed the video, people. Smash the like button if you could. Subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. I hope you all have a great week. I will keep you in the loop on what's going on with me and a few other things as the week progresses. But so far, we're in a good place. We're looking quite good. And shout out to everyone. Peace and love. Peace.